You're listening to the Galaxy Poet Podcast, a new digital platform centered around art, the creative process, and creative solutions to problems facing our world. I am your host, Jordan Ferreira. Let's begin. Welcome to episode 11 of the Galaxy Poet Podcast. My guest today is Leah Martin-Brown. She is incredibly talented as a rock vocalist, easily one of the most talented rock vocalists I've heard in over 10 years, and she's currently recording her new upcoming album in Sweden. So I'm really looking forward to talking to her about the music industry, creativity, and many other things. So I want to welcome Leah Martin-Brown. How are you, Leah?
Hey, Jordan. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
That means a lot. So there's so many things I want to talk to you about, but I know the first time, or one of the first times that we met, I mentioned that you remind me a lot of Emily Armstrong from Dead Sarah. Like the vocal, the prowess and like the edge and all of these different kinds of like rock elements within the context of like really strong melody. You remind me of that. So to me, that's so rare. So I want you to know, like, I think that's really badass. And I wanted to ask you, like, vocally, who were your big references and like who inspires you to pursue, being a lead vocalist?
Oh God. So when I was like very little, I wasn't little. I guess I was 11. That's not that little. I was. I think maybe I was 12. I'm meandering. The record "Fallen" by Evanescence came out, their first like big record, and it was my birthday, and I bought it for myself because I thought the front cover looked cool because where I was in Australia. And I'd heard the single, and I was like, I really want to listen to this record. This is amazing. And I remember lying on a bed at my nana's house with my headphones on because I had my Walkman because this was pre-iPhone day, iPod days. And I just remember hearing Amy Lee's voice and just going, oh my God, what is this? It was the most beautiful, amazing, terrifying, all of those words, like powerful things I'd ever heard. And, at the time I had been told that I could sing. I loved to perform. I'd been doing like, things that little kids do. And that was the first time I went, wow, I want to sound like that. How do I sound like that? How do I get the voice that I have to be like even close to that one? This is ridiculous. So I think Amy Lee for me was such a huge inspiration as a child. Then as I kind of grew up a little bit, Bon Scott was another big one, the original vocalist for AC/DC. Just because every time you listen to him, you can imagine, like you can hear the charisma in his voice. You can hear what he's feeling. It's cheeky, it's sexy. It's even if it's a live version and he's kind of thrown the note away, or it just has this feeling to it that you can really like connect with. So I think those were the two biggest ones for me, just as a kid. Obviously there are more, but they're the two main ones.
Wow. That makes a lot of sense, because it's funny that you say Amy Lee, because that was a huge reference for me as well. Like the single "Wake Me Up Inside," hearing that and being like, or "Wake Me Up," is that the name of it? The single?
It's it's the one. Yeah, "Wake Me Up Inside." Come on, yeah, that one. I'm having title block at the moment.
No,
it's been a very long week.
No, but that single and the video and like the album really as a whole was like, what an interesting way.
Amazing album.
Yeah, amazing writing, production, and it makes sense. Like, and I actually hear when you say Bon Scott, I hear it in your voice, and that's so cool.
Thank you.
Like it's rare, I think. The only other vocalist in that kind of way that I think along those lines is like maybe Bjork, where she has this fierce ability, to be like, to almost sound like an electric guitar with her voice, So I think that's inspiring. As far as music, what was some of the like formative music for you that inspired you to like pursue this career?
God, I like the Bon Scott era AC/DC was huge for me as a child, and as a teenager. Black Sabbath. I also loved The Offspring. Evanescence is another huge one.
Yeah.
There are just so many, like Led Zeppelin. I remember hearing Jefferson Airplane and just going, "Wow, this is amazing." I was also a huge AFI fan. There are just so many different influences, and it's strange. Like even writing the new album now, I have my childhood references, but I remember I started getting into Soundgarden and Audioslave about 7 or 8 years ago, which I know I'm really late to the party, but I grew up in a very different place to somewhere like LA or even America. Like the access that we had to music was not the same. And so I was just discovering these. So now I definitely Audioslave is something that is like a huge influence for me.
I mean, Chris Cornell, right? I can hear an influence from someone like Chris Cornell for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
I think
I
that's
love him.
amazing. Amazing singer. But that's fascinating. I wanted to ask you about that because I'm always interested to hear like what that journey is like for someone to come from a different country and like to pursue a career as competitive as it is, as a musician from another country. Like that takes a lot of like it takes a lot of creative guts for sure. And I feel like there's a story there. I'd love to hear about it if that's okay.
Oh yeah, sure. Like I mean, so I grew up mainly in a little town called Burleigh Heads, which is on the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia. It's the closest capital city would be a place called Brisbane. A lot of people, especially in like the rock and metal world, would know Surfers Paradise because we used to have a big music festival called the Big Day Out, and it
Right.
would stop on the Gold Coast. So for a while, the Gold Coast was kind of a place that you were able to go and see big shows. And I went to a Catholic school. I went to a private Catholic school. LimeWire didn't really come into existence until I was in high school. So my only way to access music was through the radio and through my parents. And so my mum did have a really awesome CD collection. And obviously, I heard, the Gypsy Kings, I heard AC/DC, as we've continually mentioned. But the things, and my stepdad had a bit of Nirvana and System of a Down, which I also listened to. But and then you had all just the stuff that went around Australia. So our Grinspoons, our Powderfingers, some of our Silverchair, obviously, these are bands that maybe Americans haven't so much heard of. But when it comes to stuff like Audio Slave or any of our really the big influences that influenced me today, these weren't things that I had access to as a child, and I didn't even know where to begin looking. I was always a singer, and I loved to perform, and I loved to write poetry. And so it occurred to me at one point that I couldn't just write poetry and sing because who would play music for me? No one wants to really listen to a singer by themselves unless they're part of an a cappella group. And I didn't
Right.
really want to do the a cappella group thing because that's awesome, but I wanted to do like rock and roll. So when I was 11, I asked my mom, I was like, "Hey, can I play the guitar?" And I don't know, it's just what I always knew I wanted to do. I just knew that that's what I wanted to be. I can't pinpoint an exact moment. It was just like, yep, this is what I'm doing and this is what's happening. So when I started playing guitar, I started being introduced to a little bit more that it would be, that would be standard for anyone who's been in LA or even just growing up in America to know, because obviously I had to learn all these riffs when I was learning to play it. And I would go into school and I'd be like, "Oh, this is a sick band." And people were like, "Who? What are you talking about? What do you mean?" Because unless there are a few of us who did actually play guitar and we were like, "Yeah, well, you guys don't even know." But again, like we were only getting access to this because we were playing it. And I'm sure like there are adults who all knew this music, but it didn't occur to them to like introduce us to it. Um,
Right. Right.
and yeah, all through high school, I just knew. I can't explain it. I just knew. And I went to university, of course, and I studied music because my mum thinks education is really important, and I didn't really know what the next steps were. So I was
Sure.
like, why don't I go to university and study music while I figure out how exactly I'm going to like take over the world with this thing? Because I don't really want to sit at home and be unemployed, and I also don't want to work a full-time job because then I'll get distracted and then I will end up not doing music. So I
Right.
worked and I went to university. I had my own band in Australia that I called Lily Rouge.
Ooh, that's a
Um,
cool name.
yeah, Thank you. I kind of hear it now and go, "Oh God, what was I doing?" Because my family calls me Lil or Lily. That's my nickname. It always has been. And then Rouge because I'm naturally surprisingly a redhead. Sorry. Please tell me if I'm rambling. I'm
No,
putting on.
no,
Okay.
no. That's what this is for, and it's
Oh, good.
awesome. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, so yeah, so I started kind of the Lily Rouge thing when I was in maybe ninth grade. So I was 14. And I started playing with, I had my acoustic guitar and I would play songs that I'd written in front of the entire school, which is kind of embarrassing now I look back at it. But at the time I was like, yeah, this is amazing. I'm such a good songwriter. I was a terrible songwriter at the time. I was 14. What could I possibly have to write about? Um, and I actually managed to get into some clubs and pubs and be able to play. My mum would obviously have to come because I was under 18 years of age. And then I met a few different people at my school who wanted to play, uh, and we played together. I was in an acoustic duo for a while with this girl. I'm still really good friends with her. Her name's Chanel. She lives in the States as well, in Vegas. And we had an acoustic duo, and it wasn't enough for me to just play around, and I knew that I had to keep going. So went to university, continued my band, and teamed up with a producer called Stuart Stewart in Brisbane, and we wrote a bulk of songs together that was kind of more in that like heavy rock metal area. Although the Lily Rouge stuff was definitely should not have been released. I feel like it was more at a demo stage now that I'm looking back, but at the time it was great. And so we did some tours and went around Australia, and I just felt like there needed to be more because I hadn't reached it yet. We made like a music video, put it on YouTube, and then a management company in Los Angeles. They were called A&R Worldwide. They emailed me or my mum. They emailed my mum because my mum would act as my manager because I didn't really like dealing with anything to do with that.
Sure.
So they emailed her and said, "Hey, we've seen this stuff on YouTube and SoundCloud because I don't think Spotify was really a thing either in 2013. And they're like, we really like it. We just want to know who the songwriters are from the band that I had." And she said, well, it's the lead singer and she co-writes with a producer. And they're like, okay, cool. So can she come over to LA in like 3 weeks? And we want her to play a label showcase. And I was like, okay, great. So it was December 2013 and I packed up all my stuff. I sold my car. I had a very kind relative lend me some money. And I jumped on a plane. I got off the plane on January 1st in 2014, and that's where my LA journey started. That's where I formed Evil Walks. Ironically enough, speaking of Evanescence, my first ever manager, his name was Victor Murgatroyd. He's currently an A&R guy at one of the big labels. I think he just did the new Escape the Fate record, but he was actually the original A&R guy for the first ever Evanescence album.
Wow.
So yeah, so he was
Wow.
the guy who helped bring it all together. So that was a huge thing for me. There was that Evanescence connection, and he really helped me in my first year of being in LA. You know, he really taught me about the scene and what to do, and he set me up with these amazing musicians. And I definitely got a head start working with him. And I think everyone kind of knows the journey from there. I think. I think
That's
I just rambled a bit in there. I'm sorry.
no. No, no, no. It's cool. It's cool. It's exciting to hear. Like I relate to so much of what you're saying as far as like even the idea of never necessarily making like a choice to be a musician, but it's just like
Mhm.
it's an impulse that you don't even have to like articulate, but it just happens and you just feel this pull or this calling. Like I get it. And I relate to like feeling wherever it was that you're born and you're in this music scene and you're pushing, just feeling like it's not enough. I have to go to where things are happening. Like I relate to that. I get it. But what like in what ways now do you feel like with COVID, do you really think there can be like a one central like hub of entertainment the way that Los Angeles was before? Or do you think like COVID has sort of changed the game in terms of like you don't necessarily have to be centrally located, so to speak, you know?
I think for the time being, I don't think being centrally located is as important just because the live shows aren't there.
Yeah.
I do believe that you need to be at least centrally located or located somewhere where you have access to people and tools that are on the level that you need
Right.
to compete worldwide, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
if you are, if you have, I'm sorry, it's been a very long week. My brain is doing this, and my mouth can't catch up.
It's okay.
um, yeah. So I think as long as you are somewhere and you have the tools that you need, or you're surrounded by for example, I'm useless with music production. Useless. I know what I want it to sound like. I know how to articulate it, but if you want me to press the buttons, I'm just useless. So here in Sweden, I am working with an absolutely amazing engineer. His name is Chris Wetterstrom, and he is doing all of the engineering and the production on this end and speaking to our producer in Canada.
Wow.
So even though I'm not able to be in Canada currently, and he's not able to come here, I am working with someone whose skill level and ability is just absolutely incredible, and they can talk and make it work. So I think as long as that's available to you, you can do this from anywhere. If COVID ends, or when we're allowed to do live shows again, I don't know, but for
Yeah.
now, I think it's as long as you've got the tools. I think.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. And even I think recently on the podcast is Jeff Scott Soda that was saying just being aware of your skill set and being aware like I'm a songwriter, right? And I need a producer. It's either you become that producer out of necessity, or you surround yourself with people that are gonna be an asset to you, right, in your career.
Mm.
And I feel like that's along the same lines of what you're saying, and it's incredible advice. And it makes things a little less confusing. I feel like for new artists,
Yeah. I
because
think oh, sorry, you go.
oh no, I was just gonna say just because there's so much expectation now. I feel like of you have to be a songwriter, you have to be a producer, you have to be an engineer, you have to be a marketing kind of whiz, right? You have to be a photographer, you have to be a filmmaker, make your own videos. Like, you know, that's my impression anyway. I'd love to hear what you think.
Oh no, I completely agree. I think there's so much pressure on new artists and upcoming artists that you have to be, the one man band. Like you have to be able to do everything. If you can't songwrite, produce, make it, do your publications, literally do everything by yourself, then you suck. Essentially, is
Yeah.
sometimes that can be some of the rhetoric. That's not coming from the business side, at least. That's just, and I just don't think that's correct at all, because as an artist, how are we meant to be our best creative selves if we're juggling absolutely everything? Um, I think you need to. I think you need to pick the ones that you're strongest with and just focus on that, and then try and find people who are on the journey with you, who believe in what you're doing, that can help you. Because with anything, absolutely anything, it doesn't even just have to be creative stuff. This whole individual approach to things, I think, is quite detrimental. I think teamwork with a successful team that, not like the group projects at university, not like those where one person does everything and everyone's like, yep, A, we got an A. Not like those. Um, if you build an amazing team around you, you're going to be far more successful than someone is just doing it on their own. And that's purely because it's not you're going to be able to have singular focus for what you do, and everyone else around you has singular focus for what they do for the common good. So
Yes.
that's my take on it.
I completely agree with that. And I think that's one thing that like the rock world, I really believe could learn quite a bit about from the pop world, because even though people, like to criticize pop sometimes for very good reasons, I do love the fact that it's like look, it's not about one person claiming to do all this work or one person claiming to write all the music and produce and engineer. It's like get the team that's going to get the best result for
Mm-hmm.
you, period. And if it means 8 co-writers on one song or 3 producers on one song, like so be it. If it's going to make the best song, and like why not, you know? Whereas rock is more like no, it has to be this way. It has to be, you know, it's a little more stubborn, which I think I like in a way, but I also feel like it probably ended up hurting rock in some ways. Does that make sense?
I think it makes perfect sense. I think I'm guilty of this. I believe if I see a song that has any more than six co-writers on it, I am just a little bit like, what did you guys do? How did you get anything done? Like, that's too many cooks. But
I get it.
for some things it does work. I do believe that rock has always been a genre, I think, similar to hip hop, that has a lot of ego.
Yeah.
And that's part of what we do. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't mean it in a rude way. I just mean our genre is like, oh, look at us, like we're amazing, we're doing this, like listen to our loud guitars. And I think sometimes some of our opinions can come from a place of ego rather than stepping back and saying, okay, I don't need to do everything. I don't need to own everything. I don't need to be the most amazing. I just have to have on my own. Like there are other people that we can share this with and do this together. I think
Right.
it's yeah. I feel like we can get a little bit too much like, oh, but I wrote that song. Why would you change it? Like it's mine.
Yeah.
I did it.
Yes. Yes. I agree. I think ultimately, like, when people talk about how rock has disappeared or, like, maybe not disappeared, but, like, really slipped away from the mainstream, I think that's the reason why. Because
Mm,
if you look at other genres like country or hip hop or whatever it may be, those are, even if you hate those genres or not, it's not your thing. Like, I think you have to at least respect the fact that they embraced, modern aspects of production and writing and like trying to keep
mm,
it interesting and new and different. Like rock did in a way, but it kind of didn't. It kind of I feel like tried to it tried to perpetuate the same sort of vibe for too many years and people just kind of lost interest. I feel
mm.
like. I hope that's going to change.
I feel like it's beginning to. I feel like there's definitely factions of rock that have done that, but then there are also so many new and exciting rock bands, even in the last 10, 15 years, that are trying to change things. I think one, it can be the attitudes of some of the older listeners, but also it is very hard to compete. It is very hard to compete with pop and hip hop when you have the labels and the radio stations just pushing that easy content, easy made. They're using beats that are just like, oh look, here's a beat, let's rap over it. Oh, the song's done.
Yeah,
It's a much quicker process than traditionally what we would do in rock. And
yeah,
if money is getting thrown at something, and it's very hard to compete with it on the same level.
true.
And there are so many amazing bands that are doing that, but I think there are a few different factors involved. That's just me, though. It's just me, my opinion.
I think that's true. I think that's true. In your opinion, like who would be some of those artists that are like trailblazing in that way and trying to redefine the definition of rock music and do something interesting? Like who are some of those artists?
I think Dead Sarah is one of them,
Sure.
as we've spoken of before. Don Broco is another band that I love. I think they're amazing. I think they're from the UK, but they do, they're a rock band, but they've got like poppy elements, but it's great.
It's
I
cool.
think Bring Me the Horizon is an amazing example. I've loved them since their Suicide Seasons days, which was when Ollie Sykes was just like rah! Into a microphone. That was this is why I don't scream because I can't. But just imagine I did, and we'll forget that I did that one. But yeah, so they started as this underground, hardcore screamo band, and now they're almost turning into like their crossover album with. They've just crossed over and they've become, they did a track with Grimes,
That's
and they're
awesome.
doing pop elements and dance elements. So I think they're another really good one. Oh, there are so many, Jordan. You've put me on the spot
Oh, it's
here.
okay. That you've named.
Crucified. Crucifers another great. I mean, I know that they're old, but if you listen to them, if you listen to their stuff, it's got country and it's got rock and it's got pop and it's got dance and you know,
Yeah,
Mizio is another great band. Mizzio.
yeah.
They're like too heavy for pop, but they're not dance, but they're not rock. There's so many.
No, those are great references, and it's funny that you mentioned Grimes because I kind of wanted to ask you what you think about this because recently there was an interview where she was talking about how she believes that we are coming to the end of human art and that all art from maybe the next, let's say maybe 25 years from that point onward, all art is going to be generated by AI. And I thought that was such a fascinating take that I wanted to ask, like, someone who is actively involved in music, actively involved in making rock music. Like, what do you think of that and the probability of that happening?
I I think on some level she's probably right. A, because she is married to Elon Musk, so she probably already knows, right?
Yeah.
and but B, there are certain types of genres or even types of art that I feel like AI could generate. I know someone who's a computer programmer, and he was showing me they have underneath where their office is, they have an erotic literature company, and this company came upstairs and like asked them to do like test their AI thing.
Right.
So sorry, I don't know the technical term because I don't know what I'm talking about clearly.
No, no, it's okay.
And they ran some of the erotic novels through this computer, and then the computer generated some erotic novels. They were
Wow.
hilarious. I read some of them. They were really funny.
That's
But
awesome.
it was, yeah, so I think on some level it will be true, but I think human art will still be there because we possess certain things that at this stage at least AI doesn't have.
Right.
And our level of creativity is limitless, whereas AI is confined to what they are able to learn and pull from an environment through observation or coding.
Yeah.
If that like they can't at this stage, they can't exactly feel the way we feel, and they can't empathize in the way we can empathize. And even if they get to the stage where they are able to, how would they ever experience or understand the experience of human emotion? Because most of the things that we feel our deepest passions about, for example, death, grief, any kind of loss, it's not something that an AI would experience
Right.
because AI can't die or feel physical pain or
That's a
be
good
at
point.
risk. That would just be I think, but for, kids' cartoons and jingles for, the next commercial, or maybe even rappers might rap over the beat, or maybe, if we're trying to write a quick song here and there, but ultimately, maybe generating drum beats or something. I don't know, but I don't think so. I think human art will prevail. That was a long answer. I'm sorry.
No, 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 it's okay. That's I loved it. I mean, it's a great point, and I've heard someone say something along the same lines and mention that like the whole reason that people buy into the concept of an artist is because they're human. It's like a mythological thing where like this person was able to climb the mountain and like conquer the dragon and like become this figure. It's like an archetype, and that along with what you just said, I feel like it makes me think perhaps that's true. And even when artificial intelligence is a thing, maybe it won't be like you say in certain genres because that archetype is just the whole purpose of the genre, you
Yeah,
know? So it's possible. I just think it's interesting to get, to
hmm
get your take on it because you've done so much great work and like I've seen you perform and
hmm
you're incredible and like you've worked with producers like you kind of I'm sure I don't want to speak for you but like I'm sure you've seen the way that the culture has sort of shifted towards more electronic
yeah.
synthetic kind of approaches, so that's why I wanted to ask. But so then you're now in Sweden working on a new album. That's super exciting. I want to hear about that if that's possible.
Yeah, for sure. I'm kind of in the stage where I'm thinking like, is this ever gonna get finished? I came over here in October to start the songwriting process. I was actually meant to come here at the beginning of 2020, but obviously COVID. Um, and I was just very lucky that I was able to come over here in October. The stars aligned, which I'm very blessed and thankful for that, as I know a lot of people have not been able to work on things. So I am feeling grateful for this. So I
Sure.
started co-writing in October. I have been co-writing since then. And then we've just started the pre-production for the album in the last 2 weeks. I was meant to be in the studio yesterday, but unfortunately my engineer's daughter had a fever, so we couldn't go in. But we've done 3 days so far. So my pre-production at the moment, because I've had a few people ask me what this looks like for me, so I'm just going to preemptively answer.
That's fun.
So yeah, so like at the moment, because I've brought in songs that I wrote 6 years ago. I've got songs I wrote here. And we're just looking at them all as they are, seeing the ones that are finished. We're like, yeah, we're happy with these. We're ready to put these forward. They go in this list. There are other songs we've sent to the producer who we're working with. His name's Brian Howes. He's in Canada at the moment. And he's gone through each of them and said, oh, well, this one has a great verse and a great riff. Chorus is shit. Or this one, the chorus is amazing. Everything else can go. Or on some of them, it's like, yeah, this is rubbish. We're not using this. So we're kind of taking the ones where we've got bits we need to fix, and we're redoing them and re-recording them at this stage. And then we're going to add them to the pile of songs that have already been said, yes, these are good. Once that's done, we're going to go through all of them. I think we'll have like maybe 30 to 40 songs to put forward for the album. We'll decide on the final track listing, and then it's time to record.
That's awesome. And I know I've mentioned this to you, like mentioned this to you in person, but like you're incredibly talented, and it's nice to see like people that deserve success and deserve to be like in that position actually get there, because often it doesn't happen and you can't figure out why. I can think of so many examples of bands that I've played shows with, and I'm like, that band should be the next Led Zeppelin, and they disappear. It's so weird, but it makes me happy that you're doing well and you're working on that album, because I'm a fan of you, I'm a fan of your band, and I think it's going to be really cool.
Oh, Jordan, that does mean so much to me. I respect you so much as a person and as a musician, and it really means a lot. Thank you.
No worries. I mean it. The other thing I wanted to ask you is recently I noticed on social media you mentioned that you made the switch completely to a plant-based diet. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
The last time we
you
talked,
didn't know that?
no, I think you said that you were kind of still switching, and I didn't
Yeah.
know that you had made the full switch. How has that been?
Yes. It's been good. I made the full switch. I think it was May last year. So it was pretty like my roommate was totally vegan, and I was predominantly vegetarian, but I'd eat some fish or some chicken here. If I went out, I'd eat whatever.
Yeah.
And then I was really trying to make the switch. The pandemic happened, but the dairy thing was really getting me. And then I went away with some friends to Big Bear, I think we went to, and we had barbecue, and I guess I had some chicken, and I had really bad food poisoning. And
Oh
like,
no.
I can't even begin to explain how bad it was. It went for 6 days,
Oh my
and I
God.
couldn't go to the doctor because COVID. But
Right.
luckily, my friend that was with me was a doctor, so he wrote me a script, like a prescription for like the stomach drugs to like settle my stomach. And then I got really even worse because I had a reaction to them. And after
Oh
that, I was
no.
like, you know what? I can't I'm just done. This is the sign that I have to completely switch. So yeah, it's been really amazing. I have slipped up here and there, like occasionally by like I'll order something and accidentally realize it's got like cheese in it. I occasionally have had an egg here and there, but I haven't had any meat or intentionally had any dairy since May last year,
That's
maybe.
amazing.
Yeah, it's going well.
Wow.
I feel great. You've been on this train for a long time now, though.
I have,
You've
but I think it's so inspiring to see like more people kind of be involved, and it's so cool to see, like I got involved because I thought it was something that was going to help my ability to perform and sing, and
Mhm.
it helped me, and I feel like it's amazing to see other talented people like following the same thing. It's inspiring.
Yeah. I just every time I see a fluffy animal, I just get really like emotional. So I was like, I can't like how can I love animals if I'm gonna kill them and eat them? So now I can, cuddle animals with no guilt.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the other thing too, which I would love to talk to you about if you're okay with it, that I think is so inspiring, is that recently on social media you're mentioning about how your journey with sobriety has also impacted sort of your take on life and your kind of approach and philosophy to life. Like, how has that in combination with like the plant-based lifestyle sort of impacted your general perception of life, and like how has it impacted your creativity?
I think so I've been sober for 19 months now. So
Amazing.
it's good. I'm excited. I definitely noticed a huge difference in when it comes to creativity, especially and also being away from LA. I think has helped that as well. But I remember the last album I recorded, and I would be hungover in the mornings, or I would be not really focused. I felt like I didn't really connect with the music that I was making. Like I loved the music I was making, and there was a lot of passion behind it. But and at the time, I was like, yeah, this is like raw, this is emotion. But being sober, I realized that I was operating under almost like I had a protective, weird, fuzzy bubble around my entire body. And I didn't really, I was awake and I was there and I was present, but I wasn't really, if that makes sense. So being
Sure.
sober, I just find that I feel things so much more deeply and I care so much more. So when it comes to writing music, I don't write throwaway lyrics anymore. And if I do, they bother me and I come back to them. And I get really drained after writing a song. I get super emotional. Um, Being in the studio, even when we're even doing little things, even though we're in pre-production now, I'll be listening. I'll be like, "Oh, that drum beat, that's not quite right. We should move that here," which I never used to do in the past. I'm like, "Oh, whatever, we'll fix it. It's fine." So I just find I'm much more connected with my craft. And I think it comes from liking myself a little bit more. So I have more pride in what I do. I think the plant based lifestyle, I haven't really had a chance to see how that works with, being on stage or anything yet, but I have noticed that my singing voice has improved dramatically. Um, I don't have as many problems with temperature changes, uh, early mornings, anything like that when I go to sing or do things in the studio. It is very cold weather here at the moment, but it's still been okay. I do cheat. I do still have honey. Um,
Right.
I know that's not. I have to say plant-based, not vegan, because I use honey. But yeah, I think overall it's just the ability to not have to rely on a substance to avoid what I'm feeling and instead channeling that into my art and my music and my creative process, which I was never able to do before.
That's amazing, Leah. I mean, personally, I find that so inspiring because in a world that's often like synonymous with like hedonism and excess and like all the things that you can hear about, it's nice to know that is more of like the facade and maybe the relic of like an older time when I see people that are like incredibly talented and they're sort of shedding the skin of that archetype and be like, no, you don't have to drink and be a rock star. You don't have to party. You don't have to do like these things. It's inspiring, and I really I commend you for that because I find it really admirable.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think I'm really looking forward to seeing like what the new record sounds like with all of these new like amazing influences, whether they be musical or like just changes in lifestyle and all this stuff. I've found that most of the artists that I listen to, like when they do talk in interviews about stuff like this, whether they start talking about meditation practice or like whatever it may be, lifestyle change wise, you can hear it in the music. Like you actually feel that there's a clarity, and it's kind of exhilarating for me because you just see this vision that's like untethered by outside influence, I guess, which I think is
Yeah.
amazing. Does that make sense, or am I rambling?
Oh, no, no, no. It makes complete sense. I keep making jokes because the producer I'm working with now is the first ever producer I worked with in LA. So we've known each other for like 7 years or so. And I just keep making jokes because every song I present to him, but I mean, there are a few in there that aren't. And he's like, "Oh, this is dark." I was like, "Yeah, I know. I got sober." And he's like, "Oh, wait, aren't you meant to get like is that how that works?" I was like, "Yes, this is called therapy, Brian." Because I think I think a lot of my songs were definitely, I was when I first created Evil Walks, the band, I based it off the AC/DC song called Evil Walks about like this evil woman who destroyed men's hearts, the whole rock and roll, woman, the one that they always sing about, that's like a major bitch, but they fall for her anyway. And I was like, okay, that's going to be my character, because that was a character for me. Like I wasn't Leah Martin-Brown. I was Leah Martin-Brown, the character. And
Yeah.
so I think I took it a little too far, because I wrote songs about like drinking Jack Daniels in the gutter and partying and doing this and heartbreaking woman and all of these things. And, obviously I'd still write songs about like, oh, this person fucked me over. Like, I hate them. But overall, I feel like it was very much like veiled, and I wasn't able to fully articulate or even really put as much emotion into it because I had a lot of things I was dealing with that I masked with substance abuse. So I think in this album, I'm really hoping that people will feel the authenticity. I feel like it's coming from a place of authenticity, and I hope that they will feel all of the emotions. I hope they feel the pain. I hope they feel the happiness. I hope they feel the excitement.
So that leads me to another question that I really wanted to ask you about, where you talk about like a character in music and how maybe certain entertainers sort of create this persona, and it seems to me like often they end up literally becoming the character. Like the human being creates the character, and then the human being just decides at a certain point, I'm getting a lot of attention for this character, so fuck it, I'm just going to become this character. Like, it, does that resonate? Like, do you think that's necessary? Because I see it a lot, and I wonder sometimes.
I think it's definitely true in a lot of cases. I think if you create a certain persona or a certain way of being, and you are, and I'm not just talking about like your work persona when you go to your 9 to 5, or the person that you are at the gym. I mean like a character that you fully create and has a backstory and that you live and breathe. I think it's very, very difficult to make. At some point, I think you do actually become that, and most of the time, at least, I don't think it's necessarily a conscious choice. I think I would relate it. I would relate it to like the actor Daniel Day-Lewis when he's playing a character in his films, like anyone who's a method actor. They research their characters, they go full into them, and they have so many problems because for the time that they're playing that character and for the time afterwards, they can't get out of it
Yeah.
because they commit so hard to it. So I think it's similar to that, except when you're choosing a character to be like just like maybe an extension of your persona. It's not like, oh, filming ends and this is done and I get back into myself. This is who I've created for life.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that you do have to be careful of. I didn't really I definitely didn't intend to create a character as such, but I definitely created things about me that maybe were not as authentic as my true self, which obviously came out once I became sober. Um, I did actually. I had an ex-boyfriend say to me once, like we were like having problems, and he said to me, he's like, "Well, I fell in love with Leah from Evil Walks, and that's not who you are. You're Leah Martin-Brown, and who you are on stage, and who you are in public when you go on stage, like that is a part of you, but that's not who you are 9 to 5, and I find that difficult." I was like,
Huh.
"Wow, you're a prick." So,
Wow.
I think, and I'm not even a famous person. Like, I am sure that David Bowie, I'm sure that, I know that we're not meant to be speaking his name at the moment, but, the character of Marilyn Manson, Rob Zombie, anyone who has a persona on stage that they've created, I think would have a problem with this.
Yeah.
Actors who are famous for a certain role, Johnny Depp for any of his amazing roles.
Yeah.
Harry Potter, the cast of Harry Potter.
Yeah. Everyone in that movie.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone in that movie will
Yeah.
always be that guy. Yeah, so I think that's maybe something.
Yeah. I agree. But it's crazy because the idea of creating a character to me and becoming that character in public life is actually really like enticing because it's a very interesting creative like prospect. It's like you create this character and it's like performance art. But I
Yeah.
think what you just said, my philosophy has always been that yeah, I can be a hedonist on stage. I have no problem being an egomaniac and a narcissist and like you know um, like an entertainer on stage. But when I get off stage, I'm not really interested in having those qualities in my personal life because I'd be
Hmm.
fucking impossible to be around. You know what I mean? And also, I just don't feel like that's who I am. And so I've had conversations with people, and like people I've worked with, people, whether it be in certain management situations or like, certain production company label situations where they're like, I wish you were more of an asshole. And it's like, I'm happy to be an asshole on stage, but in my, like, you want me to be an asshole all the time? Are you really sure about that? Like, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I think it's funny that people. It's always funny because people have these ideas of what they want you to be,
Yes.
and when you're not that person, they get angry at you,
Yes.
and it's just dumb because if I don't think that they really want what they're saying they want, but I think it's this romanticized idea. Um, I know, just speaking from personal experience, as a person, with people I don't know, I'm quite shy. Surprisingly, I know. Um, in my personal life, I don't want the spotlight on me. I don't want to be pulled on stage for things. I don't want things to be made about me. I would like to just go along with the flow, have a good time. Um, but if I carried that on stage, I would never be able to perform a set.
That's interesting.
It's not like it's a confidence thing. I hate
Yes.
talking to people I don't know. I avoid strangers. My mother did a role play game when I was about 2, where she said, "Oh, there's going to be someone that kidnaps you, and they'll put you in a car." And then
Oh
she
my God.
pretended to be the kidnapper. And I have a very vivid imagination, so I actually imagined that she was a kidnapper. And then I had a total mental breakdown, and my grandmother had to come and get me, and I wouldn't go near my mother because I thought she was a kidnapper. And I think that just scarred me. So as an adult, I'm like, oh, stranger. So I had to kind of create a persona where it's like, yeah, give me a shot. Yeah, I'll talk to anyone. Yeah, fuck you. Whereas that's not what I'm like at all.
Wow. That I relate to that in so many ways because
Yeah.
like everything you just said, it reminds me of being in Los Angeles, and it reminds me of like being told things like what I mentioned, like, and I think you're right. They have this romanticized idea of what is relevant or what is cool,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't reflect you. It's really not about you. It's about their preconception of
Mm-hmm.
you. Very confusing. I can see how actors lose their mind. 100%.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I couldn't even imagine because they're even having to say the lines. And yeah, at least with ours, it's a choice
Yes.
unless we do what I did and get a little lost.
No, but I mean, look, honestly, all of my creative heroes, like whether it be Omar Rodriguez Lopez from the Mars Volta, I mean, he was a self-confessed like heroin addict, right? He did everything. And he, having only met him briefly a few times, like one of the kindest, most like insightful, interesting people I've ever met. And I think it's because there's a period in that person's life of like these tumultuous challenges and like battles that they face with their internal world, and they come out on the other side and they have dimension, and they have an understanding of like the light and dark in them, and I think that's beautiful. Preferably I would rather not have to go through anything to go through any of that to get there, but I think it's beautiful. I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of at all. I mean, for anyone, honestly, for anyone. But yeah, I feel like I could talk to you about all these things for a really long time, but I know you're busy working on the record. I would really love to have you back on if you'd like to.
Yeah.
Like to come back
Oh,
on.
please, I'd love to. I love chatting to you, Jordan. I'm just sad that we're both not in LA, so we can't go to Veggie Grill
I know. The Veggie
or
Grill is
Cafe
awesome.
Gratitude.
Cafe Gratitude, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I hope to see you soon, and I just want to say be safe, and I can't wait
Mhm.
to hear what you're working on, and would love to have you back on again. Just
Yeah.
let me know
I'd
when you're
love
around.
to.
Awesome.
Whenever it suits you. Thank you, Jordan. This has been absolutely delightful. And thank you
Thank
to our
you.
wonderful sound guy, too.
Oh, yeah, Rob, there you go.
Yeah. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you very much, Leo.
It's my pleasure. Thanks.